Welcome to Nice Ashes. I'm Mike.
And I'm Nate. What are we smoking today, Mike?
We are smoking a Rocky Patel Vintage 2003 Cameroon.
Nice. There's a bit of spice on the cap.
See, I thought mine was a little sour.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I thought mine was sour, like the mouth taste.
Okay. It tasted a little spicy to me, but I want to mention this too before we get into it, is when I took the plastic wrapper off the stick, both the labels came off inside the wrapper. Not a big deal for me because they come off, they're supposed to come off later anyway, but just wanted to full disclosure.
Interesting.
Sounded like our friend, the voice of the matriarchy.
Yes, our friend, the voice of the matriarchy, came over and closed the door. Somehow the dog got it open.
Oh, okay.
Well, but for the listeners, my studio here, let's call it, has a paddle handle, so the dog can actually open it if she really wanted to.
Yep.
But she was staring in on me and nudging the door open from the inside.
Well, what are your initial thoughts on this one, Mike?
It's a little spicy, but it's got like an acid note. Mine does.
Yeah.
Like an acidity.
Yeah. Like when I wet it, the cap I tasted the spice, but it's got some kind of like back note that's not entirely pleasant, but it's still early in the cigar, so no big deal.
I would not call it pleasant. I may have to pause in the middle of the episode and grab a glass of whiskey to knock that note down. So Today I'm pairing with water, like ice water.
Yep.
And I might need something to actually knock that note down if it doesn't go away.
Yeah. I am drinking I believe it's eucalyptus lemon honey tea. I put some honey in there, and then I put a nice splash of whiskey in there. I had chills last night for most of the night, and you might be able to tell my voice is a little nasally or dry. I'm hoping it's just the weird weather we've been having, but figured I'd start with this like kind of immunity tea with some whiskey, of course. I had somebody that's a coworker that swore by drinking warm whiskey with honey in it to take care of any kind of throat issues. So don't know how accurate that is, but
that's similar to a hot toddy, and I've known a number of people that swear by hot toddies for colds.
Yeah,
and there might be something to it because it has the acid and the alcohol, and that'll kill all the bacteria in the back of your throat.
Yeah. And
it tastes nice. And, of course, it makes you a little intoxicated, so you'll fall asleep, pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah, you said something about the warm whiskey and the honey coating the back of your throat and letting the whiskey soak in. So.
Sure. I have no idea.
I mean, whatever, but.
Right.
Anyway, that's why I'm drinking what I'm drinking, so.
Right. It makes me feel better when I'm sick, so.
Yeah.
That's what matters. So what are we talking about today, Nate?
Well, we're going to do a double whammy on, I guess I would call them not politically correct movies. So we're going to start with an older one, not as old as Blazing Saddles, so everybody rest easy. I think back to what, 2005, 2004-ish, 2005-ish, somewhere in there?
Something like that. It was new when,
Yeah, and then we're going to do a brand new one. That's been, I don't know, it hasn't really gotten a whole lot of buzz, but people that are kind of embracing the anti-wokeness have been championing this film, this newer one that we're about to do, and I have thoughts on it. Mike and I haven't really discussed either of these movies in specific depths. We've talked about the first one we're about to talk about in the sense of, two people that enjoy the film, kind of talking about some of the highlights, but we've not really gone through and said any of our thoughts or opinions or things of that nature. And is it fair to say, Mike, this first movie is one of your favorite films?
I would say that's fair. Yeah, I love this movie. It was a box office flop. I think that Fox killed it on purpose because they didn't like the messaging. And I was part of the first generation of people to like make it a quote unquote cult classic, if you want to call it that. Because I was in college at the time when this was released onto DVD, and of course I own a DVD copy of it. I don't know if they even sell it in Blu-ray, to be honest with you. But
I don't know if they probably did. They probably did release it. I think it's in HD or full HD on the streaming services. A lot of times that'll happen, even if it never got a physical release in HD.
Sure. Well, I looked online, and there's no place that's streaming it for free. you have to rent it online. But of course, I have a DVD copy, so I watched it on DVD.
Yes.
But I know it was streaming on Hulu, but I have the feeling that Disney took it down because it.
I think I watched it on Tubi. It was on Tubi for a little bit.
I looked for it on Tubi today, and it was not on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was on there, but they Tubi only has certain titles on for so many days before their viewing or their streaming rights lapse or something. I'm not entirely sure how it works, but
right. Yeah, I even looked for it on YouTube, and there's 2 people that did commentaries for the movie for the entire length of the movie, but there's no like video of the movie. It's the goofiest thing.
Yeah. It's also out there on other websites for your viewing pleasure. So
absolutely.
But, should we stop beating around the bush and teasing our listeners and tell them what film this is, Mike?
Absolutely. We are talking about the cult classic Idiocracy.
Welcome to Costco. I love you.
Welcome to Costco. Oh man, dude, there's so many great one-liners.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we got her off on a whoring license.
So why don't you, for people that haven't seen Idiocracy, it's a little bit older film. It's Luke Wilson, right?
Yep. Luke Wilson, Maya Rudolph, Dax Shepard, and Dwayne Elizondo Camacho, Terry Crews.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so bring us a run through of kind of the plot, and then we'll get into kind of talking about it. And then we'll talk about our other movie, which is, I guess, as politically correct as this one is.
Yes. I would say that this movie wasn't necessarily being purposefully politically incorrect. It was just trying to make fun of trends in the culture that which continued on, and now it's like foretelling the future.
Yeah,
right?
And that's the one thing is, Idiocracy is supposed to be a comedy movie, not a documentary. And at the time that they made the film, and it's Christopher Guest, right, the director, and he did...
was it Christopher Guest or was it Mike?
Mike Judge.
Christopher Guest direct? I thought it was Mike Judge. I know Mike Judge wrote it.
Okay. Yep, Mike Judge.
Yeah.
Anyway, but it was, it's a farcical... I would say it's like a farcical time travel romp. You know what I mean?
It is.
But they leaned heavy into the farcical aspects of what they extrapolated out for how they thought humanity would be in, I believe it's 500 years. He gets frozen for 500 years.
Yeah, it's 500 years. So, brief plot synopsis. Military experiment to freeze bodies long term. With the goal of taking their elite fighters and extending their useful time frame. So they put a prostitute and army loser that are quote unquote average.
It's not. To be fair, it's not an army loser. They found the 2 most average people they could find. They did all these statistics and things.
Yes,
right?
They have the stats and they have the average blood pressure,
and they
average
to find,
IQ,
like the most average. And when you meet Luke Wilson, he's doing like a computer job but watching TV or something. And they're like, "Hey, you got a new assignment." And he's like, "Well, can't I just sit here and watch TV?" They're like, "Yeah, somebody else." He's
managing a library on a military base. That's what he's he's doing nothing with his life.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the experiment gets botched. It's constant one-liners with upgrade and it's a corrupt program.
So him and Maya Rudolph go into these pods, and then the program gets shut down because the guy in charge of it got too involved with upgrade and like the pimping industry. And they shut it down and then forgot about it and like sealed up the room. And then 500 years go by and they pop out and have to adapt to the new reality.
Yes, of 2505. And hilarity ensues. And like Luke Wilson immediately thinks that he's having drug-induced hallucinations.
Yep.
And Maya Rudolph somehow doesn't. She just thinks that the world has changed that radically because she's like a prostitute, so from her perspective, like the streets aren't that much different. Yeah.
And who was the first guy that Luke Wilson ran into?
Dax Shepard, his lawyer.
Dax Shepard. Yeah. What was his name in the movie? I can't remember.
Oh, dang it. No, you're going to have to make me look it up. It's something stupid. They all have stupid names.
Yeah, they all have stupid names. But he's like, he runs into this guy or into his apartment or something, breaks through the window. I don't know.
Oh, it's Enrico Bendejo.
Oh, yeah,
That's his name.
And they've all got big gulps, right? And he's on this big, like, lazy boy chair watching TV, and it's like the dumbest programming ever. And it's got a toilet built right in because he, like, flushes and stands up, and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing to my house, man?"
Yep.
And
Ouch my balls.
Ouch my balls. And they talk, and they have some kind of, it's like, what, Southern slang kind of thing that kind of took over the...
So it's
societal
Valley Girl, various kinds of crunk, inner city slang, and something else that all get blended together. So they're speaking of dialect mixed with all of these sub-dialect street languages that is actually hilarious, and I can understand exactly what they're saying.
Yeah.
Even though it sounds dumb as shit.
Well, yeah, but that's the point.
Yeah, it's supposed to sound ridiculous. But yeah, it's funny.
He doesn't have the barcode on his wrist or whatever for citizenship identification, so he gets arrested and goes to trial. But because he can form a sentence, that basically loses him the case. Because
yes, so in 2005, it was still acceptable to call people fags.
Yeah,
as a not like a homophobic slur, but as like a way to say that you're being negative somehow, or like you're an idiot or a wuss or whatever. And
all of these other terms that now you can't say.
Yeah,
I'm not saying we should bring back these terms. I'm just saying, like, it was a different era. These are the movie's words, not our personal beliefs and words.
Right? Yeah. He like goes to the doctor, and the doctor says he's doing fag talk.
Yep. And he's like, he puts together this eloquent. Yeah. Yep. And he puts together this, or what did he say? He's like, "Oh yeah, you're retarded like my wife, and now she's a pilot." Or something.
Yeah, no, my ex-wife. Yeah, you're retarded like my ex-wife. Man, nowadays, tards can live real kick-ass lives. She's a pilot now.
Yeah, and that was Justin Long, wasn't it? He made a little cameo in there, I think. And but yeah, so he put together this eloquent defense of himself in the courtroom, and the response to that was, "There he goes, he's in that fag talk again." And so they sent him to jail, but he talked his way out of jail because he's like, "Oh, I'm not supposed to be here," and they're like, "Oh, well, there's the exit over there."
Yep, and then he runs out the door, and the automatic machine guns shoot each other.
Yep.
There's a lot of small details in the movie that if you enjoy that sort of thing, it's very small details just constantly.
Yes.
Like the hospital is St. God's Hospital. Yeah. But the last like 4 letters of hospital are going straight down the side of the hospital like they ran out of room on a piece of paper.
Yep.
And it was the way that these experimental pods were uncovered was the Great Garbage Avalanche of 2505.
Yep.
Because they're just piling their garbage in the middle of a city instead of disposing of it. So,
and they they only drink Brondo.
Yeah, they only drink Brondo, the thirst mutilator.
Yeah, it's got electrolytes. There's a whole scene where he's like, "Yeah, but what does that mean?" And they're like, "Well, it's got electrolytes." He's like, "Yes, I understand that, but what do you mean by electrolytes?" And he's like, and everybody else is like, "Well, they got them."
Yeah, it's what plants crave.
Yeah,
what do plants crave? Brondo. Yeah. So he gets sent to prison.
The Wendy's self-serve booth.
Hardee's, Carl's Jr.
Or Hardee's, Carl's Jr.
Carl's Jr.
Yeah.
Yep, the self-serve booth
isn't too far off from nowadays. You go to McDonald's and you order your own thing, and then it pops out.
Yeah. So he gets sent to prison. One of the best lines of the movie is, "What are we doing here?" He's like, "Well, sir, you have to take an IQ test so you can have a jail job, so you can be an individual particular in jail."
Yep. And then the IQ test is like, put a triangle shape in a triangle hole, and the guy next to him can't do it, and he's like looking around like, "Are you serious?"
Yeah, and they're like trying to hide their results.
Yeah, he's like he's cheating off of them. Like, put the triangle in the hole, and so he ends up with like the highest IQ anyone's ever seen, but he's just average from 2005. So
right, yeah. The first question was, if you have one bucket with 2 gallons and a second bucket with 5 gallons, how many buckets do you have?
Yeah. And it took him a while because he thought it was like a trick question.
Yeah, he was like looking around like, what?
He's like, is this a trick question or not? So, and then I think the Costco scene is hilarious too. And they're like, well, we'll go to the Costco or something. And then it takes up, I don't know how many square miles, this Costco.
Yeah, it was an hour walk to the train inside of the Costco.
Yeah.
Welcome to Costco. I love you.
Classic.
And everybody's wearing Crocs, but it was before Crocs blew up.
Yep.
That was one of the things that Mike Judge said that he was afraid of, because he hated these plastic, horrible shoes. but they blew up real popular after the movie was made. So,
Yes.
and I've never worn a
Crocs
pair of
before.
Crocs.
I have a pair. My wife got them for me, and I like them. I use them mostly as like outdoor summer slippers instead of, like the fake fur lined winter slippers. So
right. You don't have wedding Crocs?
I don't. No, I don't. And I don't have any bling for my Crocs because there's a whole like subculture now of you can get bling for your Crocs that stick in the little holes there, and you get little like charms and baubles, things like that.
I have a great life hack for Crocs. We can talk about that next episode.
Okay.
So, but yeah, and then like I say, everything's in the small details. All the background stuff is all hilarious. And that's a lot of the joy of the movie is the backgrounds.
A lot of the stuff, the hospital scene is hilarious because they bring them to this room that's got kind of like all the treatments right there. And they give him 2 probes. He's like, okay, this one goes to your mouth, or this one goes to your butt. And he looks at him, and so he does. And he's like, oh, no, wait. This one goes to your mouth. And he pulls the one out of his butt. And he's like, this one goes to your butt. And the receptionist at the hospital, he's like, he's trying to explain what's wrong with him. And she's looking at all like the pictograms, right? And it's like pregnant with a baby or like gunshot wound, but they're all like pictograms, not even words. And she's trying to look for the right button to push to tell him where to go.
Yep, which it feels like that in the hospitals. And they have brands. So I watched an interview with Mike Judge.
Okay, yeah.
And he didn't have all of the brands in the movie that initially. He was advised by lawyers he had to add more because he was making so much fun of Starbucks and Kentucky Fried Chicken and Fuddruckers that he needed to just pile on more so that he couldn't get sued.
Yeah.
Everything's been devolved in society down to like sex and money. The worst parts of our culture. I will say there's not enough.
Depending.
Right. There's a lot of fat people, but there's not enough fat people given like the big gulps of pop that everybody seems to be having. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of Brando. Yeah. Well, they had that and Nasty.
Yeah. Yep, they did. Yeah.
I'm not sure if you noticed that. They have Nasty. Yeah.
And they have like all of their clothes, or like the clothes that he gets to wear, have like I don't remember if it was like it was Nasty. Like there's all like just the logo plastered all over for the design of the shirt.
Yep. Yeah. The shirts are like just a series of logos. And
like
they're all polyester.
Like NASCAR coats almost,
Yep. Everything is like 100% plastic. And then if you have a job, they'll have the title of your job on the sleeve of your shirt. Did you notice that detail?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I watched it 2 nights in a row because I watched it myself to reacquaint myself with it before doing this episode. And then the next night I told Sarah that I watched it. And she's like, well, I want to see it too. So we watched it again. My
Sarah made me go to the basement today and watch it because she hates it. And I've seen it, I don't know, since like when I first saw it, I think it was 2006, 2007, whenever it came out on DVD. Yeah. Because I never saw it in theater. And then I've been watching it a couple times a year every year. I fucking love this movie. But like the Secretary of Defense, or like if you're an attorney at law, on their long sleeve polyester shirts, it'll have attorney at law or vice president.
Well, like the secretary and stuff, they all have these like gigantic medals they have to wear on their neck, right?
Mm-hmm.
With their job title on it.
Yep. Yeah. Those are medals of office. And then,
the medals of office.
Yeah. Like the judge will have judge on their sleeve.
Yeah. and then he's trying to like not have to go back to jail and stuff. And so he's making these promises, and they're like, well, he's going to fix our plants or something. And he's like, I don't know anything about plants, but they've been watering the crops with Brando. And so he's like, we should switch it to water. They're like, what? Like, don't you have water? And they're like, you mean the stuff in our toilets?
Yep.
And then it was funny because they didn't really focus on the toilet in the Lazy Boy recliner very much, but you hear like a quiet flush, and then there's a scene where he's talking, Enrico or whatever is talking to Luke Wilson's character, and he like sits down again and then flushes again, like in the middle of the conversation, and then stands back up and keeps talking.
Yeah. I really like sex and money. Yeah, Enrico, I think a lot of people do. Not like me.
Maya Rudolph's character, the prostitute, is having a heyday because she's getting all these people to pay her for sex in the future.
Right. She's manipulating these.
Sleeping with any of them. She's like, well, you pay me now and maybe I can fit you in later. And they're like, that sounds like a good deal. I like sex.
Yeah, she's just manipulating all these moronic men on the street. and it's hilarious. Yeah. Hey, the boys and I were thinking, can we go family style on her? Like, holy fuck.
Yeah.
That was like the dawn of like the stepsister, stepbrother porn, you know?
Yeah. Like
which apparently, yeah.
And then what? Oh yeah, his name. So he actually has to go and get his barcode tattooed, and his name is like or something. Because
not sure.
Oh yeah, not sure. That's right.
Yeah, not sure. And then instead of Joe, whatever his name is, I can't remember his last name, Joe Bauer. But yeah, not sure. It's secretary, not sure, ma'am.
Yep.
Joe, what the hell is going on?
But yeah, in the beginning too, it starts off and it kind of bookends the film with this. Is they were saying that smart people, like in 2005, when the first part of it takes place, were waiting to have kids, whereas poor, uneducated people were just popping kids out like crazy.
Yep.
And so that's how they explained like the gradual dumbing down over the course of 500 years.
Yeah, they had the family line of Cletus and all of his brood of kids.
Yeah, and then like girlfriends and
yeah. Then the couple with the IQ of 138 and 141, where he dies of a heart attack jerking off into a cup because they waited too long to have kids.
Yep.
So it's good.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, you should check it out. If it sounds like something you're into, it's definitely not for everybody.
It's not for everybody. I think it's hilarious. Sarah hates it.
I think it's hilarious.
It's like I say, she hates it so much I had to go into the basement and watch it in the basement because she will not watch it. So after he switches everybody over to water for crops because they had apparently people were starving to death. They wanted him to fix the economy. They call it economy. Yeah. That's one of the big jokes or gags is that they use all the childlike misusings of words.
Yeah, like edumacation or whatever.
Right. It's even more better.
Yeah.
Stupid stuff like that. It's just constant, But anyway, so they apparently 50% of the workforce in that economy is working for Brondo because they have Brondo pumping to like every water fountain.
Yeah.
And so they all lose their jobs. So there's street riots. So they put him into another court case where he's found guilty, where they have Fox News and the presenters are just like nude, extremely ripped people.
Yep.
And then they put him into rehabilitation for a single night. And then we find out that it is basically a monster truck show where they execute criminals on TV with monster trucks. Yeah. And hilarity ensues with that. Of course, they build their monster trucks too big to get into the stadium and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that he survives that incident because the crops start to grow. And then they have, I don't know if you noticed this detail, but he became vice president and then president. And then he had like 3 kids. Yeah. They're the 3 smartest kids on the planet. Yeah. And then Enrico had 24 kids and they were the 24 dumbest kids.
Yeah, because that was the bookend of the opening, the beginning where it was smart people only have, so many kids.
Yep.
So I think I'm about halfway with the cigar, Mike. What are your thoughts?
You know what? I'm not disappointed. I thought it was going to be a stinker, but it's turned out to be really good.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
The first, I don't know, half inch or so wasn't the greatest, but that's perfectly in line with a lot of the cigars that we smoke. The first little bit, you got to get through that. So.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's kind of spicy and not too strong, kind of mellow.
Yep.
I want to ask you one more question about Idiocracy before we close it up. Did you watch it until the credits were done?
I don't think so. Is there an after the credits scene?
There's an after the credits scene.
Okay.
And it's a running gag that Maya Rudolph is going to be afraid that her pimp upgrade is going to come into the future to get his money because she wasn't paying him for prostituting for a year.
Yep.
And there's a scene where Upgrade pops out of one of the stasis cells and he walks out and he's like, I'm going to get me my money. He starts walking down the street. Yeah.
Classic.
I've seen the movie a few times, if you couldn't tell.
Yes.
For those who are listening.
I remember seeing it probably when it first came out on DVD and stuff, and then I didn't watch it again until, I don't know, like a month ago. So
yeah, I watched it for the first time when Netflix still was like the DVD service that sent DVDs to your house.
Yep. That's probably where I saw it too, because I remember I had the DVDs coming.
Yeah, I may or may not have had 2 illegal copies made of that film, and I burned both of them out watching them and traveling. And then I had to buy the actual DVD. Yep. So.
Yes, indeed. All right. So the next film we're talking about, and we really kind of just picked these two because we always wanted to talk about Idiocracy on the show.
Yes.
And without going full on into it, you know, it takes about half an hour to talk about Idiocracy, which is about where we're at. And we want to talk about another one, and this other one has kind of been billed as like the anti-woke, and there's this whole like go woke, go broke kind of rumblings on the internet, mostly in regard to everything Disney puts out. But, you know, other studios do as well. I guess most other studios are also owned by Disney, like Marvel, the Marvels, and other things. So
right, they're going with the too big to fail model, where no matter how many failures they have, they only need a couple real big successes, which I think they failed to do this year.
Well, even the failures are fine for them because it's big tax write-offs for them, so they don't really care, I don't think.
It can be, and things like Snow White, all they want to do is renew the license on the original property because it's 85 years old. And
that's
they have to
all their live-action remakes, and we've talked about this. They have to make another film based on the original film to extend that original film's copyright. So that's why they don't try and make these live-action remakes any good, even though they have the money to make them good. They just refuse. Right. They do the cheapest thing they can to extend the copyright.
They don't need to, especially when they're making movies for kids, because kids are dumb and they'll like whatever.
Well, yeah.
It doesn't need to be good. But
they could. I mean, you know, there's so many adults that grew up on Lion King and Aladdin and all these other classic Disney movies, and you put together a great live action, you're going to get everybody loving it. But you just do the cheap, easy way out. It's just kids. So
you bring up Lion King, and we could bring up Aladdin with that too, and Beauty and the Beast. And those came out when, like, I remember going to the movie theater for those movies. So
yeah,
like now they're classics. So. I guess we're old because we're. I remember going to the theater to watch them. In the movie that we're going to discuss, I remember the scene. I wrote it down. The startup guy, he liberates the jobs, aka fires every person born before 1988. Which I thought, I was like, 1988. I'm like, holy shit! Are we fucking old in the Hollywood sphere? We are old now. We are old people. Yeah. I don't know if you noticed that or if that stuck out to you. But I'm like, 1988's not that long ago. I mean, I was born before 1988. But 1988
as well.
In the reality of people who are alive right now, right? That's a lot of people. Like the majority of the workforce probably was born before 1988, or at least a good portion.
Which startup guy was this?
The startup guy that bought Bill Burr's business. Aspen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Aspen bought the first thing he did was fire everybody that was born before 1988.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, in the movie.
In the movie. Yeah, in the movie
we didn't
that we are about
we didn't even
discuss.
say what movie we were talking about.
No, I'm starting it off with just a little detail. You got
me like all weird over here because I thought we were talking about like Disney live actions, and you're like, yeah, I remember the startup guy, and I was like, is that what Disney did?
No. I was segueing into the movie here. Into the movie. Yeah.
I'm with you now.
Yes.
So you might have guessed by Mike's mention of Bill Burr, but the second movie we're talking about is Old Dads.
Yes. And I watched this with my Sarah, and she enjoyed it, actually.
Yeah, I watched it with my Sarah, too. We both enjoyed it. I gotta say, though, like, everybody's like, oh, it's great because it's the anti-woke and whatever. But really, like, for the first 45 minutes of the movie, Bill Burr's just a giant asshole, and you don't really like his character. But I guess that's pretty true to his stand-up routines and stuff. So if you like his stand-up routines, you probably like the first 45 minutes. But if you want a movie that's more than stand-up routines, I was annoyed for a good chunk of the beginning part of the movie.
You see, and I liked the first portion of the movie because a lot of the not Bill Burr characters were what you call a crybaby.
Yeah.
And it was him having an over-emotional reaction to the constant interactions that he had to have with people who were crybabies.
Yes. Which I can't fault him, but he was very assholish about the whole thing, which is understandable, but...
Well, he's over-the-top Bill Burr character.
Yeah.
You know, for sure. It's like he was playing a character, right? Like the aggrieved person that was somewhat being taken advantage of by the wokesters, you know?
Yep. Yeah, because he and his buddies founded this vintage sports jersey company thing, and then they decided to sell it, so they get their big payout. And then, like you said, the guy that came in was an absolute, I don't know what you would call him.
He was a 27-year-old serial entrepreneur tech bro.
Yeah.
Who was hyper woke. So he uses the lingo to cover up his evil actions, basically.
Yes. But he wasn't necessarily the evil one. It was the company that he was working for or whatever. I don't know, like, because he got a little redemption at the end of the movie.
Yes. Well, he was a victim of his own.
Yeah, he was a victim.
He was hoisted on his own petard
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and the investors or whatever wanted him to do certain things. They had to go find, like, they sent, I think this might be the scene that Sarah and I talked about the most is when they took one of the new guys and they had to go find this homeless guy or something, this rancher guy, to be the new face of the company. And they had recordings of the car ride where because there's one black guy and he was asking this, hyper woke, politically correct kid, basically like, look, if you're like, what's your favorite band, right? Or whatever, favorite song. And it was, I can't remember. It was a rap group.
NWA.
Right? NWA. And he's like, yeah, so when they say the N-word, do you sing that word when you're singing all the words, or do you skip over it, or like, what do you do? And the guy is trying to like figure out what the least offensive answer would be. But anyway, the point is they had the car somehow with a video recorder in it that they brought back and used to fire Bill Burr and his buddies. And then they had a camera in the younger employee's apartment where he was singing along to the N-word, and they fired him because of that. And so Vice was like, well, can they do that? And I'm like, well, they could probably put a recording device in a rental car from the company, but they probably couldn't put one in your apartment, legally speaking. But I'm not a lawyer, so.
The gimmick, because I was paying attention to that as well. They got the video from the car company because the car company put the camera in to protect themselves legally in case of an accident. And apparently in the state they were in, they could be legally recorded without their consent.
Yep. Okay.
And then the kid, the guy, he was being recorded by his smart TV, and the company bought that data from the manufacturer of the television. Yeah. And smart TVs can and do legally record you in your own home. So.
Yeah, varying degrees of legality, I'm sure, depending on your state.
Depending on the state that you're in, you have different amounts of
recourse
rights. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then they end up, let me tell you my favorite scene. Can you guess, Mike?
No.
All right. My favorite scene is after he gets into a fight with his wife because he's basically, he's rightfully being a dick to his kid's principal or whatever, and it's some kind of like hippie commune school.
Private school.
A private school. And he tries to make it up to him and brings in a plant. And then she's like, well, obviously, you know that this plant is detrimental to our flora and fauna here in this area. And I can't believe that you would imagine to bring this in because it's just like you. And so, like the principal is not a nice person to him.
Well, she is the definition of a crybaby because she uses all of the right PC language to be an absolute nasty piece of work. And she uses her privilege as a white, educated woman to hurt others around her and protect, shield herself.
Her position of power.
Yes.
As
the
director of this school. Well, anyway, Bill Burr has to go spend the night in a hotel because his wife got mad at him. Because even though he was trying to make it up to this woman, sometimes in the cases of cry bullies, it's best just to cut your losses and let it be. But anyway, so he's out on the patio in this motel or whatever, and he's smoking a cigar. I didn't catch what type of cigar he was smoking, but he was smoking a cigar out on the balcony area, right? In the common area, people can walk around. And some guy comes and he's doing the room service, right? And he's vaping. But this guy's like, hey, you can't smoke here. And Bill Burr is like, well, what are you doing? You're smoking and I'm smoking. What's the deal? He goes, no, I'm vaping. He's like, well, smoke's coming out of your mouth. Smoke's coming out of my mouth. And, the whole point is like, I'm being told I can't smoke by somebody that's smoking. I think that was my favorite scene because it really illustrated the ridiculousness of some of this stuff. In my mind, like it simply and succinctly kind of wrapped up a lot of the conversations that I've been privy to or even partaken in with these kind of crybaby people, where it's so ridiculous if people would just stop and think. But yeah, the cigar versus vape thing, I thought was...
That scene is what made my Sarah lose interest in the movie, because the woman across the way that was like the racist who backed up Bill Burr, that's where Sarah was like, I'm done now.
Yeah.
I think I ruined it too. I'll go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I thought that was great, because here Bill Burr thought he found an ally, but then it was this racist person. And I think that is kind of what motivated his character, the character arc, to kind of like look at his own actions and be like, wait a second, I'm getting racists to agree with me. Like maybe I'm not, not, I don't think he ever said that he wasn't in the right, but just the way he interacted with these people, because his wife was always telling him just to calm down and to like think before speaking, and, just stuff that you should do as a person anyway.
Right. And she wasn't much better than him in certain ways. She had a temper, and she was a crybaby, and she physically assaulted him and kicked him out of the house. She locked him out of the house, and then she physically assaulted him and physically kicked him out of the house. So,
yes.
Just saying, if it was a man doing that to a woman, they would have been arrested. So,
yeah.
I will say that I mentioned this to Sarah, and it blew her mind. But I told her that like the way that all of the people he was interacting with talked to Bill Burr, because she was like, these people are being assholes, blah blah blah, and I'm like, that's exactly how I view how most people talk in like a professional work setting, right? Yeah. Like that's how they talk. That's what they're saying. It's kind of crazy. They're being nasty and unpleasant, but they're covering it with pretty language, acceptable terms.
Yeah, niceties and
everything. Because she's into that nicety stuff, and I am not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think so my problem, I guess, overall wasn't really to do with the movie at all, but everybody was saying, this Old Dad's movie is like the answer to the overly woke films and media content coming out. And I didn't really feel like it was a movie designed to necessarily fly in the face of the wokeness, even though it certainly did that. But the overarching message, I mean, there were a lot of messages, but the overarching message for Bill Burr's character was kind of how to interact with these people, these woke people, and not be an asshole about it, and not let it get him all riled up to where he's making terrible mistakes or terrible decisions in his life. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, the message...
Because at the very end, he was playing catch with his kids, and he's holding the new baby, and they're playing catch, and the one guy runs by and is like, hey, do you really think that's safe? Holding a baby while you're playing catch? And he's like, hey, thanks for pointing that out, man. And the guy kept running, and Bill Burr kept playing catch with the baby in his hands. So
he has to call him a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
But he didn't say it to his face and then cause a scene.
He said it under his breath afterwards, as the guy was out of earshot. So, because there's so many, especially with parenting and stuff, there's so many I hesitate to call them do-gooders, but they think they're helping with their advice, but they're really, it's like, come on, you don't know what you're talking about. Even if you have kids, every kid is different in certain ways. So, and every parenting style is different too. So I feel like kind of the overarching message was, these people are here, and yes, they're ridiculous, but you don't have to let them get under your skin.
Right. You can't let them get under your skin, even though they're
because then
obnoxious.
You play into their game. You fall right into their game,
Right. They want to be the victim. That's like they had a meeting where there was a white guy that said, I can't believe that this meeting is being dominated by two white men. And the guy's like, aren't you a fucking white man? He's like, my DNA results say I'm 3%, whatever the hell it was, Sri Lankan.
Yeah. It's like, okay.
It's like, what? That was like the Elizabeth Warren thing. Like, yeah, I'm 1% Native American. Like, what?
Yeah. Yep. And then they were going to go to Vegas, him and his two buddies. And the one guy's name was what, Mike or something? The black guy?
Yeah, Mike. The black guy was Mike. And then...
Yeah, that he got like an alter ego in the strip club joint, but they didn't make it to Vegas because they're old and they were like, we just got to drink and gamble and strip club stuff.
Yep.
Which they did. And that's when they met up with the serial entrepreneur again. And he was there because he got fired from his thing.
For being cultural insensitivity to Native Americans. Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Because the spirit animal, because they wanted this guy, this white guy, old white guy who's like a roamer around the Southwest desert or something.
He's like a trapper hobo type character.
Yeah, to be the face of the new spirit animal line. And then he's like, I didn't realize that was offensive to Native Americans.
Yep.
Or whatever.
Yeah, it was. Now, I don't know who the black guy, what he did before, but the other guy who had the crazy wife. He was the boyfriend of Will on Will and Grace. He was the boyfriend who was the cop.
Yeah, he was also one of our favorite characters in Boardwalk Empire. He played a 1920s like gangster.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But I guess he does stand up too, that guy.
Oh, okay.
To moderate success, but I've never seen any of his stand up. I've only seen him in Boardwalk Empire and other roles. We're like, oh yeah, it's that guy from Boardwalk Empire.
Yep. Yeah, he was a regular cast member on Will and Grace back in the day.
Okay, yeah.
I thought it was, I don't know, I'll run it past you. Bill Burr's wife is in the entertainment industry, and she's a producer, but she's also done some acting. And I thought it was kind of a miss, since the wife wasn't there in every scene, that they could have had Nia, his wife, as his actual wife in the film.
Yeah.
I thought that was a miss.
Yeah.
Because they did have some controversy a couple years ago. Bill Burr got himself in controversy because he said some negative things about some people that were attacking his wife.
Yeah. But he didn't walk up on the Oscar stage and slap somebody, did he?
No, some activists said that he used his wife and child as a black shield to be a secret racist or something. And he's he's like, you can go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
So he was not impressed with that line of reasoning.
Yes.
Shocking, I know.
Yeah, it's shocking that he would call it out exactly how he sees it.
Yeah, that's kind of his shtick, right?
Yeah. What I got upset because he was in Mandalorian and that female MMA was in The Mandalorian. And I thought their characters were great. And then she made some comment, can't even remember what it was, and she was fired from The Mandalorian. Like, they made a big thing, like Disney fires whatever her name was, for these comments. And it's like, oh, okay. But, it's the same when they fire directors for tweets from 2001.
Right. I don't even remember.
You have to understand, like, the cultural humor level of our society has gone drastically down. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, the shock comedy of the early 2000s, it was intentionally offensive. Like, that was the point. American Pie was supposed to offend your sensibilities, and that's why it was funny, at the time. Which, what the hell is the one with Robert Downey Jr.?
Iron Man?
No. The comedy movie he was in.
Tropic Thunder.
Tropic Thunder. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And I don't know, like some of this stuff, like Idiocracy and the phrases and words and names they call each other is done. It's done not just to shock, but there's a point, something. And I think if you're not shocked, even if it's not an offensive shock, but if you're not shocked, like, it doesn't cause you to evaluate society, or why can someone vape at a music venue, but I can't bring in a cigar and lighter to the music venue, but somebody can vape and I can smell cotton candy the whole performance. You know what I mean? Right,
which is putting just glycerin and whatever is in it.
Yeah,
it's not regulated by the FDA, so we really don't know what's in it.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, and so if you don't have some of these shocks, it doesn't cause you to evaluate your life or society. Not that every movie needs to do that, but the good movies give you something to think about, even if you don't agree with it.
Right. And I thought the movie with Aspen coming back, they did a really good job showing, not necessarily talking about, but showing that, like, culture of silence that people have around the wokeism. Yeah. Because if you disagree with the wokeism, like at your workplace or at a event, like, you have to keep quiet, and you can talk about it in hushed tones. And that's acceptable as long as nobody else can hear you, because then they'll report you, even though they might think the same thing. They get street cred for reporting you, and it's very much that, like, Soviet style system where you self-censor, right? You know that you have to self-censor.
Yeah. And if you're in a discussion, and even if you're right, you're not right in the eyes of HR or the management or whatever. I mean, it's a very kind of on-the-nose movie, Old Dads, for the time that it was made, being 2023.
Right. And I mean, like I say, I don't even disagree with a lot of the themes. Obviously, Bill Burr was doing the Bill Burr character, which is...
Yeah.
That's his prerogative. I've read interviews with him, and he, like, takes what he thinks, and then he tries to amp it up like he's his drunk dad.
Yeah.
Right? Like he amps it up past what his normal limit is. Yeah. And they talked about him going to therapy, which he does. He's a big advocate of people going to therapy who have anger issues, which he does, Yeah. But he's also aware of it. Yeah, I didn't get the sense that this was like some like anti-woke anthem.
No, I don't think that was the message. And, but that's kind of what people thought of when they saw, well, Bill Burr's making a movie to, combat the wokeness in Hollywood. And I'm like, I don't think that's really what it is, but it's, definitely appealing to those people in the audience or those people in the country or in the world that, aren't necessarily all rah-rah for a lot of the woke things that are going on.
Right. I mean, you could read into stuff what you want, largely. It's not as ambiguous as Barbie was, obviously, but I actually discussed the Barbie movie last night with Al, friend of the show, Al. And he hadn't watched it yet, and he was like, I don't know if I want to watch it. And I'm like, dude, it's possibly the best movie of 2023. Like, I really liked it. Yeah. I thought it was great. And he suggested that I watch the second Doctor Who special, because I did not like the first one, but he said the second one's a lot better.
I saw the clip. I saw a clip from the first one, and I was like, I can't do it.
Well,
I quit watching. I think, and we talked about this, Mike. I think I quit watching shortly after that Rosa Parks episode.
Oh yeah, see, I watched the whole season, but that Rosa Parks episode like totally soured my gut. Yeah. I was like, this is ridiculous, even for Doctor Who.
Yeah, and I think it was when they were like, yep, so she was the original Time Lord, but not even really a Time Lord. She's a different species than everybody else, and the Time Lords, like, genes manipulated her to get the regens like she had, and blah, 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 and then basically retconned the entire Matt Smith storylines. And I was like, okay, I'm kind of out. Like,
I never watched The Timeless Children, but I didn't want to. Yeah. I heard about it. I'm like,
I mean, Doctor Who kind of plays a little loosey-goosey with that because it's been running for so long, so not everything. They have their own little goofs or inaccuracies with their own timelines and stuff. But that one with Jodie Whittaker was basically retconning some of the best Matt Smith episodes. So
right. Well, and they retconned the Dr. Donna storyline in the new special. And my biggest issue with it was that they took 10 to 15 minutes of screen time and they put it solely towards political messaging instead of story development.
Yeah.
And you just can't do that and make a good TV show,
Yeah, and we talked about that too. And that's not what they were doing in Ahsoka. But, if you've got a set runtime or, a runtime you're aiming for, especially in TV shows, and you can get away with it with, one-parters and two-parters and stuff like that, but you really can't be devoting a large chunk of your runtime percentage-wise to just flat-out political messaging, regardless of what side you're trying to message to. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of things I learned in film school, but, it's the show, don't tell. So whatever your big, like, rah-rah thing is, can you find a way to show it instead of having some character like just speak it? You know what I mean? And it's the same with like PowerPoint presentations at work. Don't write all of your text on the fucking slide. Put some pictures and images, and then you could read the words off of the notes section so people don't have to read with you. Like you're not putting up, it's a slide. It's not a page out of a book or your notebook. Like you can put pictures. It's okay.
Right. Yeah, it's just bad structure, right?
Yeah, Ahsoka, bad storytelling.
Ahsoka felt to me like every episode was like the bummer episode or like the slow episode in a series that is like 8 years long, right? Like you can have 8 slow episodes in 8 years, but you can't have every episode be that way in 1 year.
Yeah. Yeah, right? Well, the first 3 or 4 episodes felt like, okay, we know we're doing 8 episodes. We've really only got ideas for 4 episodes. So let's just stretch out the first episode into 4 episodes. And then we've got the other 4 already written, so we're good to go.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it was like filling time is what they were doing and not really getting much done in the way of storytelling or character development or anything like that. And I think they might have fallen into the trap of like, well, this is the first. I mean, it's not the first time because Ahsoka made appearances in Mandalorian, but it's like, hey, we're seeing some of these Rebels characters in real life for the first time. So they kind of got a little carried away with that, I think, and caught up in that. And like, well, we can take the time because everyone's going to love seeing these characters in live action.
Yeah. And they're attractive and people are going to be enamored with that, Yeah. They really use that to their advantage. Like Sabine was played by an attractive actress and Hera was played by an attractive actress. And, Rosario Dawson's an attractive actress, so they can just have them on screen and people will not say anything.
Yeah. I wanted more of the Sith, not Sith lady.
Oh, the Ukrainian supermodel?
Yeah, everybody was all fawning over like Sabine and Ahsoka, and I'm like, I could go for more of the blonde Sith. Like, that's fine with me.
I don't want to be thinking about that when I'm watching a Star Wars show. Yeah. That's my thing.
Well, Dave, if you're taking notes for anything in the future with these characters, that's my note.
But Old Dads, there's not a lot to say about Old Dads. It's very simple.
Oh, it's a simple movie.
Comedy
it's fine.
movie.
I wouldn't say it's like the greatest movie of all time.
No. It did have a bowling alley.
Yeah.
It did have a bowling alley. So.
And maybe watching it a second time, I'd like it a little bit more because I kind of know what to expect now going into it. Because I wasn't really, the only thing I knew really about going into it was kind of on the anti-woke spectrum of woke, not woke, and it was Bill Burr. So knowing that Bill Burr wrote it or, was even in it, you just kind of know it's going to be somewhat offensive in some parts.
Right. I mean, it was, if I were to break it down very simply, the first half is Bill Burr doing a series of Bill Burr skits in the real world.
Yeah.
And then the consequences of his negative behavior build up to the point where there's a massive breakdown. Yeah. And then there's like a couple moments of epiphany where he's like rock bottom. And then he tries to correct his negative behavior and survive in this world that he's a foreigner in.
Yes.
And it's not like the anti-woke up yours mentality. It's like, we have to survive in this world. So accommodations are going to have to be made on my part to like not crash and burn,
Yeah. And I guess it's almost a little bit like the Cowboys with John Wayne, where he's, or even the Shootist, right? Where he's older. Yep. And in the Cowboys, he can't get any hands to work for him. So he takes all these, I don't know, like high school age kids, like really young kids out on this cattle drive. But he's the old guy, and in the Shootist, he's a gunfighter, but they've got electricity in all the saloons and all the towns and automobiles, and nobody rides horses anymore. And so it's kind of like coming to terms with aging out of kind of being relevant in society.
Oh, sure.
I would say,
And that's a very relevant conversation. Like we started watching Winona Earp, which is like a Canadian sci-fi series. Okay. And so I was doing the back reading, and I like all these characters from the Wild West. Everybody does. I have older parents, so I watched a lot of Westerns. And like all those old gunslingers lived into the modern age that survived, right?
Yeah.
Wyatt Earp died in the 30s.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like the Wild West was, like an 8-year span. Like it was not a long, like everyone thinks it was, a long period of time, but it really wasn't.
In the kindest possible interpretation, it was 1868 to 1898. So at most 30 years, but not really.
People think it was like 100 years worth of time, but it wasn't because, technology was advancing so fast with your refrigerated cars for beef and cattle and, expansion and progress and all that stuff. So
Wyatt Earp's ride was like a month. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's progress. That's exactly why it died off, is these guys went out there and like, we're crazy. And then the railroad came through, and then they couldn't be crazy anymore. Yeah. Like, I found it very interesting that Big Nose Kate was a pauper. She died a pauper in like Arizona. Apparently, built housing for the miners and all these like Western frontiersmen that couldn't survive in modern society. And she lived till 1940.
Wow.
Yeah. And a lot of these characters, they just couldn't adapt to post frontier life,
Yeah.
So,
well, I remember we went to Little Bighorn, Custer's Last Stand, and there one of the tour guides said that one of the people that survived the battle was then flown out in a plane to see the site of the massacre again. So can you imagine you're riding horses out and fighting off Native Americans, and then later in life they're like, hey, hop on this plane, let's go look, show us around the battlefield, like just technology moving that fast, or things. So
sure, like if you were born theoretically at the right time and you lived a long life, you could have remembered the Civil War and World War II.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a big difference between level technology.
Yeah. And battle styles and all that stuff. Well, I put my cigar down because my fingers are burning, but I liked it.
I like it as well. I still have like an inch and a half left.
Okay.
That must have been the Idiocracy episode that got me.
Yeah. Well, you were doing a little bit more talking, which is fine with me. So
absolutely.
This is our episode right before Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays, whatever, whether you celebrate or don't celebrate, secular or religious.
Well,
hope that you have a good time with your family.
I agree. Go on,
Mike.
I was going to say, I always follow the war on Christmas because it's like a narrative in right-wing circles, and I think it's hilarious. So in the United States, 94% of the population actively celebrates Christmas, which means 6% don't.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that they get all spun up about the birth of Jesus and the religious reasons. But as a society, as an American culture, we all celebrate Christmas, even if we're agnostic or atheist, right?
Here we go with the stats, right?
Okay, yes.
So 94% of the country actively celebrates Christmas, but only 67% of the country is quote unquote Christian. And half of them are non-active participants in Christianity. Like, they're Christians in name only, right? They're not.
Yeah.
They might never go to church, like
That's
literally.
What they identify as, but they are not active.
Right. And then of the 6% that don't celebrate Christmas, a lot of them are the Christian people. Because a lot of Christians don't actually celebrate Christmas. They think it's pagan. The hardcore fundamentalist Christians a lot of times don't celebrate Christmas.
Yeah.
So it's largely a secular holiday, which why I get a kick so much out of like the war on Christmas narrative, because clearly the people who are the most against Christmas are the most hardcore Christians in this country. It's like, who doesn't celebrate? I have a fucking Christmas tree in my living room right now, and Sarah's an atheist, and she insists on having it. So. It's always interesting.
The corporatocracy loves Christmas. Like, they would never have a war on Christmas because they love selling all their stuff and people buy stuff. So
no, they just want to complain about the year's new Christmas ornaments that don't necessarily support.
Or the new Starbucks Christmas holiday cup, That was a big one a few years ago, remember?
Yeah, I do remember. This year, one that hit my radar was a Santa Claus that was black and in a wheelchair, and people it made it to Fox News. Like, they were really mad about it. It's like, why would you even? Why do you care about a Christmas ornament?
A completely made up entity.
Yeah, it's a Christmas ornament that you don't have to buy, that other people want to buy. I buy all kinds of Christmas ornaments.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, I have a cigar ornament.
And why can't Santa Claus be black or in a wheelchair? Like, who cares? He flies around on magic reindeer dust. It doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter.
As far as I know, he's still wearing the red suit. You know what I mean? Like, what's the difference? You don't have to buy it.
If you can get on board with Tim Allen assuming the mantle of Santa Claus, like, nothing else should bother you. And that's one of the coolest things is my parents they were little ceramic Santas. And it was from each different country. And so the different Santa outfits, like some were in green outfits, some had, long pointy stick up hats, and some had the floppy kind of red hat. Some were more maroon. They had different, bags or accoutrements on their suits. And it was just kind of a nice, like, through the different, they're mostly European countries, Christmases and USA and stuff. But
Christmas is originally a European holiday that has long roots before Christianity.
Well, and Santa Claus wasn't in the Bible, I don't think, unless I missed that chapter.
I think he was with the Easter Bunny. He was in the same chapter with the Easter Bunny
and the dinosaurs,
Cupid.
Right?
Yeah. I always get, like I said, this year it made it to my radar that they were. It made it to the news again. That they came up with some nutcrackers that had some colorful garb. Instead of like the traditional red, they had like purple or whatever. I'm like, why do you even care?
Who cares? Yeah.
Does it matter that there's a nutcracker out there with a different colored shirt? Like, you don't have to buy it.
They don't have any problem when the nutcracker is dressed in your football team's jersey, right? They sell those. Nobody gets up in arms about that.
Yeah, why would you? It's
who cares? It's a nutcracker.
Yeah,
it's a big deal.
Like, it doesn't matter, does it?
Yeah, it's not like race swapping Isaac Newton.
Well, yeah, that's where it starts to get sticky. Or Anne Boleyn, or
I mean, if you have like real historical people, then it's different. If you have made up people, it doesn't really matter. Like, as long as you're true to the source of the made up stuff, like Ariel, the Little Mermaid being black, who cares? It's a mermaid, you know?
Right. It's irrelevant.
I mean, in the original cartoon, you know, there's 7 daughters of King Triton or whatever because of the 7 seas. So each mermaid reflects a separate sea, and Ariel reflected the Red Sea or whatever. So it makes sense that she has red hair.
It would make more sense if she was Semitic.
Yeah.
If, you know, the Red Sea is in the Middle East, you know, or the Africa, Middle East area, you know, she could be Ethiopian. Yeah. You know, whatever countries. I don't even know what countries are on the Red Sea. So I apologize for my lack of geography.
The point is it doesn't matter. I mean, they're made up characters.
Right.
You know, made up fictional things. Like the Easter Bunny. Does the Easter Bunny have to be white? A white rabbit? Can it be a brown rabbit? Can it be a gray rabbit?
Right.
Like,
it doesn't matter.
You get upset about, is it a floppy-eared bunny or is it a pointy-eared bunny? Or come on, like, what are we doing? It's a fictional thing. It's made up.
It's a fictional story that has evolved over time, and it's going to continue to evolve over time.
Yeah.
And, you know, Coca-Cola does not own Santa Claus.
Yeah. They own the Coca-Cola polar bears, but.
Right. Yeah. It's ridiculous. And I enjoy it. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, everybody, I hope you have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year and all that sort of stuff.
Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Even if you don't celebrate anything this time of year, it's still close to the end of the calendar year. You'll probably be spending some time with family with the time off of work, so enjoy that time with your families.
Be safe, have fun.
Thanks for listening.